I'm hoping that you've all could get access to the webinar, and I truly welcome everyone to in participating in the Energy Literacy for Financial Counsellors called Let's Talk. And first and foremost, I just want to pay an acknowledgement to country where FCAQ is, and I know Ewok is based down in Brisbane, but where we're based, or I'm based, is in the Cairns region, and we're part of the Yidinji tribe, and the Yidinji tribe has 8 clans, and where our office is situated, we're part of the Yiringanji peoples, and they were known for like the sea people. They had a very close connection to the sea, and so just in the spirit of reconciliation, and we as a sector, and the work that we do in our communities, we'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Queensland and Australia, and the connections to land, sea, water and community. And we pay our respects to the elders, past, present and emerging. So without any further ado, I'd just like to introduce a very special person who has been a great contributor to a lot of education and information and support to our financial counselling sector, and that is Jane Perez. Thank you, Jane. Jane's the Energy and Water Ombudsman of Queensland, and she has a couple of co-presenters today as well, and I'm sure Jane will introduce them to you in Lucy and Lauren. But before we start, I just want to do some housekeeping, bit of housekeeping. So your camera and microphone have been turned off, and this is to ensure a stable connection throughout the webinar. So it's not like we don't want to see you and things like that. It's just a nice assurance that we can get the message across without any interruption. So please turn on the question and answer function though at the top right corner of your screen, and that way when you want to ask questions or see important information links, that's the function you use. This webinar is being recorded, and this is basically, it will be edited, but it's basically there for a resource for you all. It will be located on the Ewok website. Might do a bit of negotiation with Ewok, see what we can do for our website as well, but fingers crossed, hopefully I can twist a few arms there, but we'll see what we can do. But if you have any experience with technical issues, there's an email at ewok_it@ewok.com.au, and just type a little message of your IT issue, and hopefully they might be able to sort it out. Okay, so let's move on to this lovely lady, Jane. And I just want to say, firstly, welcome. Make sure your microphone is working. We'll just see if Jane's all good.
All good. Good afternoon,
fantastic. Fantastic. So basically in this webinar today, there will be a presentation, and we'll talk about some of the key areas in the webinar. And I suppose where Jane will sort of discuss is about forming those relationships with energy companies, having conversations about, we will have conversations about building that rapport, getting an understanding of how they function and what measures you can put in place to create great outcomes for your clients. I think a really important topic area is the Home Energy Emergency Assistance Scheme, HEEAS, and we've got Lauren to present that. We will look at the way that Ewok and how we interact with Ewok and their function, and then also we'll do a bit of a presentation on understanding an energy bill and what does that mean for our clients or retailers' customers. First and foremost though, Jane, I'd just like to start the ball rolling by, I just saw the news today, and we're just constantly hearing it, you know, COVID, and the impacts that it is having on all of us, whether it be our freedoms, our restrictions, our worries. It's constant. And I think in this age that we're living in, energy is really critical to us, particularly when we're facing lockdowns and things like that. And I suppose, well, then what could be the concerning things for consumers in this space and facing COVID that could also have a detrimental impact when something like credit reporting comes into it, where it can impact your ability to obtain energy to your household? That's just one example, but have you got any response to that, Jane, in regards to the energy space that we're in now when dealing with such an event such as COVID?
Yes, certainly, John. And look, I agree. When you pick up the paper or look at the websites, you know, listen to the radio, it's all about COVID, and it's about the significant impacts. I think I know from my personal perspective, at least, where we were 12 months ago, it's very different now, very different feelings I think people are experiencing, and different type of hardship I think people are going through. And I'm not just talking about financial hardship, but very much on well-being, concern for family. It's a different Delta. The Delta variant, I think, has made the world for us a very different place. And we've all been through, anyone in the financial counselling world or anyone that supports community in any way. You know, we've done a lot of work on, particularly in the energy space, on, you know, everyone was operating under the statement of expectations, and that's gone on for, you know, just over a 12-month period. It ended at the end of June, and then the regulator has then brought in or, you know, some people call it the pop-up statement of expectations or the standby statement of expectations, where when a community goes into a lockdown, they expect the statement of expectations to be applied to that community when they're actually currently experiencing that lockdown, instead of the blanket rule that it was before. So we're starting to see now where it's coming in, and it was in the Sydney CBD area, and, you know, that inner city, and now it's across regional New South Wales, and it's the same in Melbourne, and we had it here in Queensland for a little while, but it's gone back now as we go in and out of lockdown here in Queensland. So it's the uncertainty of when and how those expectations in reality are being applied to our consumers here in Queensland. And when we speak to the retailers, we're talking about, well, what are you doing? How are you doing it? What are you trying to do? And a lot of them are still working on, we want to engage with our consumer. We want to engage with our customer. We want to work out a hardship plan, or work out some way with them going forward. And Queensland's in a bit of a different place, as in the southern states are going through and have had a harsh winter. So their bills are naturally higher now, and some of them have, you know, are still carrying a significant amount of debt. We will have that as well here in Queensland, where we have a lot of our customers who still do not have their bills up to date due to many and various reasons. But this Delta variant, and we can see when you look around, you go around your streets, you see shops closed. So the impact of this, I think, is broader and longer term than what we experienced last year. So we've been talking to the retailers about, well, what are you going to do? And they're still very much on, we want to work with the customer. We want to work with anyone that's helping the customer through this process. And when we talk about, we haven't seen a large volume of the credit reporting issues coming through. That does not mean it's not happening. It's just that the disputes aren't actually coming through to us on this stage. So when we've reached out and spoken to some of the retailers and said, what's happening? Is this, you know, why is this occurring already? You know, those type of questions and discussions we're having with them, a lot of them are saying, well, we're not wanting to do it, but there are situations and circumstances where we need to. And I'm like, okay, so if it gets to that level, what can be done? What can be done by a financial counsellor, or if a customer comes to us, what would you do? Are you in so far in the process that you can't pull out now? And if you are, why are you doing that and why aren't we trying some other ways? So in my discussions with them, I'm being told, no, we can pull that out. We are using it as a mechanism to try and get discussion with the customer rather than actually wanting to enact that process. You know, my comment is, well, is there a better way to have that discussion with the customer rather than, you know, that? Because if someone tells me that, then I'm like, that's going to affect my whole livelihood when it's already at threat in other circumstances as well, when I may not have work or, you know, significant reduced hours. That threat hasn't gone away for a lot of our customers.
Yeah.
In Queensland, or sorry, I should say consumers in Queensland. So it's trying to get that balance, but I think it comes down to that real issue again of we need to get the customer to speak with their provider and work out what can be done. And when it can't be done or there's nothing that can be done, then we need to go into a different set of discussions. But we want to make sure that the electricity is kept on and that there's a plan that's suitable for all the parties. And that may be, you know, some really interesting and heavy discussions need to occur to get that. If, you know, you've got a bill that's long-term not paid, we want to keep the electricity on. How are we going to clear that and make sure that the customer is set up for what they need to do going forward? So it comes back down, John, to that really important communication is the key here.
I think you're totally right, Jane, and I think the financial counselling, and we have capability workers and resilience workers that assist people in this space as well. And I'm really interested about the statement of expectation, because you did mention it in the conference this year at Queensland, and it does play a significant role, because there's a good example at Yarrabah where Cairns had that lockdown for 3 days, and Yarrabah is a remote community, about 60 k's by road, probably about 15 nautical miles east of Cairns. But again, if you had people that was a snap lockdown, and if you had people going through a disconnection process, and you can see the complications that would have on vulnerable people when they don't have, for a period of time, 3 days lockdown, they don't have electricity. And I think these are the things that we really need as sector leaders and as representatives of consumers, is that I think moving forward with COVID, these are the things that we need to sort of work on. So in saying that, there are some really good incentives that the government has provided, and one is the HEEAS process. And I think it was really good if we could spend a little bit of time on that for our listeners here, to get a good understanding of that process, how it works, and how they can be a part of it in assisting a person to access it as well. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Jane, to do the introductions, and we'll keep the webinar rolling forward.
Wonderful. Thanks very much, John. I totally agree. You know, and when you hear just about what you commented on about those disconnections during COVID, you know, that's where a conversation needs to occur. And anyone listening to us today, if that is going on and you've got someone contacting you, please ring us or ring the provider and have the conversation. They are in lockdown. We need to do something. We need to make sure that that vulnerable person is not put in a situation, because it might be a 3-day now, but it could turn, as we've seen in the southern states, it can turn to weeks and weeks. We need to make sure that that's action, and action quickly. And I'll be really happy to introduce Lauren to you, but I just want to make a comment before I do. I sit and look at the numbers of the HEEAS grants that are provided, and I remain astounded that we do not have many more people actually obtaining these grants, because they are a good grant to get. And I know there's plenty of people out there that need them, you know, that have these real emergencies, and that we really need to encourage everyone to get on board and do this. So Lauren, I will hand over to you. Lauren works within Smart Service Queensland, and can anyone who knows everything about this, I've been told, is Lauren. So I'm really looking forward to learn more that I don't know. So over to you, Lauren. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Thanks, John. Thanks for that kind introduction. So I'll be talking to you today about the Home Energy Emergency Assistance Scheme, Now, as you can see, it's a bit of a mouthful, so we do refer to it as HEEAS. That's the acronym. You'll hear me use that term as we move across the presentation. So what is HEEAS? It's for Queensland households who are experiencing problems either paying their electricity or gas bills as a result of an unforeseen emergency or a short-term financial crisis which has occurred in the past 12 months. So the HEEAS grant, we can provide assistance of up to $720 per household, and that's available once every 2 years, provided your clients can meet the criteria. Now, the important key point to note is that it's actually not a hardship grant. That's really a key point to remember. Eligibility does apply, and we'll go through that shortly. So the applicant, very briefly, they do need to be listed on the energy account and they do need to reside in the household for which the energy account is attached to. So they're the first steps to tick off. With the eligibility, we just ask that the applicant holds one of the following. So there are 4 criteria listed there and they just need to meet one of them. That's all, not all of them, just one of them. Further eligibility, and this is really the crux of what our assessment comes down to, the applicant needs to display either a decrease in their household income or they have incurred an unexpected expense in the last 12 months. And again, they're only required to demonstrate either or, one of those sections there. Sometimes you can have multiple things, but just one is fine. So the application process itself, it actually starts with the applicant and the energy provider. So the applicant does need to contact the energy provider, as Jane mentioned. If you are having difficulty paying your bill, speak to your energy provider and they'll go through some options. If they feel you'll be eligible for HEEAS, they'll then send the applicant the application form, and the form is then submitted directly to concession services. So that's another key point for your clients, just making sure they send the application form to us and not back to their energy provider. So our role briefly is to really assess the applications, and we also liaise with applicants if further information is needed or missing on the form, and we also get in touch with energy providers to seek updated billing and go through any appeals processes if necessary, and of course we pay the grants as well. So with our assessment, we look at the 2 main things. So we're looking at if the household has had a decrease in the household income in the last 12 months. And here are some examples. I won't go through them, but these are common examples and these are listed on the form as well. A key factor to note here is with COVID, we can't unfortunately consider the COVID supplement being removed from Centrelink benefits. The main reason for this is that the COVID supplement was just going to be a top-up payment and was always going to be removed. So in the scheme of HEEAS, we only look at unexpected decreases. So the COVID supplement being removed was actually not unexpected to be removed, unfortunately. But we will work with clients if they do have that reason on the form. We'll work with them to see if there are any other eligible reasons. The other component we can look at is if the household has experienced an unexpected expense in the past 12 months, and below is a list of common items we regularly see and can assess on. So for our assessment to run smoothly, what we ask is that with your client, you do fill in all the information we ask for. So on the form, we ask for the amounts that the applicant may have paid for expenses and the dates this has happened. And if it's a decrease in household income, what we look for there is the date that the event occurred. So for example, loss of employment, and then we just ask for some financial information as well, the before and after. Now, you don't need to submit any receipts at the time of your application, but just bear in mind your client may be asked to submit these later on, and of course fill in the declaration section as well to avoid delays. One of the key pieces of information here is that general cost of living expenses aren't able to be considered because they are expected expenses that we all have, such as rent, food, rent, food, and other bills like your Wi-Fi, things like that. So unfortunately, just putting down a phone bill isn't something that will get your client across the line. So our grant, it is for the amount of $720, and that's the maximum. However, that depends on your client's outstanding balance at the time of the assessment. So just quickly, if your client's outstanding balance is above that $720 mark, we will provide the $720. If their outstanding balance is below that amount, for example, $300, they would only receive the $300. And the caveat to this is that the other eligibility criteria is met. Now you can combine both electricity and gas accounts. You can put them through on the one application. However, the total grant won't exceed $720. So it's not $720 for one and $720 for the other. That's the total combined amount. Just some brief additional information. If your client does need time to fill in the application, additional time, that's no problem. Just get in touch with us and we can extend the deadline, because the energy providers do put a date on the form. If your clients want to appeal a declined application, that's absolutely fine as well. Just inform us within 28 days and we'll take you through the steps needed. And sometimes it's just a matter of providing, the wrong information, or they filled in the form wrong, and that's absolutely fine. We'll work with them to try and get them over the line. And also, if your client has got a closed energy account, if they've moved and they've still got an active account or a closed account on their previous property, get in touch with us as well, because we can still work around closed accounts as well. Okay, so just a brief summary. So the key points to take away: it's a once-off grant available up to $720, and that depends on the outstanding balance at the time on the energy account. Now, the HEEAS grant is available once every 2 years. So that means your clients, if they are approved in August 2021, for example, they won't be able to receive another grant until August 2023. If they are knocked back, they can still apply in that 2-year period. So it's just you get one approval every 2 years, provided you still meet the eligibility criteria. Now, as I've touched on, we do have applicants who have both electricity and gas accounts, and we do ask, if possible, you can submit both applications together. However, if your gas account is with a different provider to your electricity provider, we do give a period of about 2 months to get both applications in, just so you can get the most updated billing with each provider, because they won't be in sync most of the time. So that's all fine. Really important that the declaration is filled in, the name, signature, date. Otherwise, we can't actually proceed with the application if this is not filled in for legal reasons. And we do ask that you always fill in the sections we ask for. So again, the amount you've paid for, the date that it's occurred, and the household income where relevant. This next one's very important as well. The reason your clients provide does need to have occurred within the last 12 months, because what we're looking at is a short-term financial crisis. So unfortunately, we're not able to consider things that have happened outside the last 12-month period. If in doubt, you're always welcome to contact us at any stage. We do have a couple of us here all the time. We are working from home, but we are always available. You can phone us, you can email us. Here are our details here. And look, if you do have questions on the form when you're filling it in with a client, feel free to call us. If you've got them next to you, you want to give us a ring, that's fine. And we can talk you through the form, because there's a lot of bits to fill in. It's better if we get it right the first time, and that'll save time with the assessment process moving forward. Thanks, Jane. I'll hand back to you.
Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry about that, everyone. Lauren, just before we move on, I just have a bit of a situation that I just wanted to run past you.
Yes.
Now, just a really quick one. But if you've got if we've got a customer, for example, that's exiting, they've been in a family or domestic violence situation and they've been in a shelter, for example, they're about to leave the shelter or have just recently left the shelter, moved into a rental property, but they'll have suffered a loss of income. They may not be able to necessarily prove that, but they could be in a situation. So how do you sort of work around that type of any ideas or thoughts you could share with the group on that particular scenario?
Definitely, it's a great question. Unfortunately, we do see a lot of applicants come through with DV or family violence being mentioned. Now, you mentioned if that particular person has already left the property and they aren't able to provide documents or anything like that, that's fine, because we're not going to ask for documents in the initial application. And with domestic violence, we can assess the application up to 6 months after the closed account, because that's considered one of the special circumstances. So things with domestic violence we look at, we'll ask things like, has there been a marriage de facto separation? That's one of the criteria we can assess on. We can assess on, removalist expenses. We can even count bond and 2 weeks rent in advance for the next property they're moving into. There's also if a housemate moving out reason on the form. So if the perpetrator moves out, that can be one of the reasons as well, that loss of income because that person's moved out. So they're the sort of things we can assess on in that particular scenario. Being impacted by DV itself is not a reason in itself. So if the person simply puts on the form, I've experienced domestic violence, we'll then go back to the client or their nominated representative and just flesh out a bit more reasoning there about the decrease in household income.
Wonderful. That's great. Thank you very much. And I'm sure we'll have some more questions towards the end of the session today, but thanks for that. I just felt that was a really good one to clarify.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Listeners today. Great. Wonderful. So now we're going to move on to Lucy. So Lucy is one of our acting team leaders and has been with Ewok for a number of years. I won't say how many years, Lucy, just in case that sounds good or bad, but Lucy actually before she joined Ewok, did work as a financial counsellor. So she's certainly very beneficial to us as an organisation, because we really get to understand a lot of, what you're seeing, why you might ask, and your processes. So I felt it was great today that Lucy could share back with you as well. So Lucy's going to talk about working with us and also explain a bit about our process. And then she's going to educate us all on what we need to look at when we're looking at an electricity bill. So Lucy, over to you.
Thank you so much, Jane. And for full disclosure, it's nearly 9 years, but it feels like yesterday that I was in the financial counselling sector, and therefore it's always a thrill for me to be able to be a part of these webinars as well and share some knowledge that I've gained from being at Ewok. So today I'm just going to give you a very, very brief overview of how Ewok can help, issues we can and can't help with. We're also going to be looking at a copy of an Ergon energy bill, which doesn't differ too much from other retailers, energy retailers that we see across the state, but it provides a really good example of how to understand a bill. I'm also going to go into some of the myths that we hear here at Ewok about the energy sector and people's understanding of their rights and responsibilities. And most importantly, I'm going to provide you with some tips of being able to help your clients with approaching Ewok for assistance, or when they come to you and experience difficulties with their bills. So firstly, Ewok is a free, fair, independent dispute resolution service. Our dispute resolution team are specifically trained to assist customers to resolve complaints with their energy, gas, and here in Southeast Queensland, water providers. The highest number of complaints that we receive revolve around high billing or disputed account balances. However, we often find that those issues mask a further underlying issues about a customer's capacity to pay, or even impending disconnection, or even a customer that has already been disconnected. So in addition to that, we also commonly receive complaints regarding default listings, concealed water leaks, damages to property, delays in receiving a service or poor customer service, and misleading marketing practices. But although we have the banner of the Energy and Water Ombudsman Queensland, there are some of the issues related to these services that we can't assist with, specifically the price of energy and water. Those are set by retailers, or for ergon are set by the Queensland government. We also can't assist with bottled gas or LPG issues, and what we call bulk hot water supply. So that's a reticulated water heating supply that's commonly found in apartment complexes. We also don't accept complaints in relation to solar rebates, the amount that energy companies are offering for solar rebates. And also currently, we don't have jurisdiction with the billing of energy and water to residents of embedded networks, or more commonly caravan parks, retirement villages, apartment buildings. And this is where an on-selling supply of electricity between a body corp and a consumer might exist. But even if there is something that falls outside of our jurisdiction, we usually know who can help and we can refer the matter on. We've actually have a very useful resource that we are a member of. This has been developed by the Australian and New Zealand Ombudsman Association and ZOA. And I'm also going to pop a link to this resource in our chat, so you have all have a copy of it to be able to pass on to your clients, or use when you're assisting your clients in identifying where to send a complaint to. But it really doesn't matter who you call, because we all work together to support consumers, and collectively we're all going to be able to point you in the right direction as to where to make a complaint if it's something that we can't assist you with directly. So moving on to our complaints process, look, there's a lot of information available on our website about how to lodge a complaint and what we do, and certainly when you call us, we'll talk you through it. But really briefly, I'm going to talk to you about how we actually assist with complaints. So once we receive a complaint from a customer or their advocate, we endeavour to return contact within 24 hours, or we speak to you on the spot if we have somebody available to and who can take a complaint directly over the telephone. So one of our ways that we can assist is by either arranging for a senior representative of an energy or water provider to be in contact with a customer directly, or we undertake an independent investigation on a customer's behalf. We're not consumer advocates, and it's really important to remember that in approaching our office, and we must maintain our independence and impartiality from both the consumers and industry. However, our main aim is to achieve fair and reasonable outcomes, even when our review or assessment of an issue does not identify an actual error on behalf of an energy or water provider. As you can see, last year, we received more than 6,000 cases in total. The majority of those complaints were about electricity issues, and they're our general bread and butter. But if a customer has contacted us without first speaking to their provider, we're going to refer them back to speak with their provider in the first instance. And we actually have a very recent process available through some of the retailers, especially down here in Southeast Queensland, where we can put you in direct contact in real time with their complaints department. And this is through our warm transfer process. But if a customer remains dissatisfied with an outcome that they receive or a resolution that they've discussed directly with their provider, that's when we can implement one of our two processes. The first is a referral to higher level, and this is the most timely of our two options. And through this option, we'll contact your provider at a higher level to outline the issues as we've heard them from your client, customer directly. And through this process, we instruct the service provider to make contact with the customer directly within 5 business days, with a view of resolving the issues directly. Now, our office also follows up with the customer to ensure that the matter has been resolved to their satisfaction. And if it hasn't, we've got a second option for being able to escalate the complaint. And that's through our investigation process. Now, this is a more formal process, and it's certainly lengthier than the referral to higher level, and it's one that we undertake if the issue is a little bit more complex, or if the initial RHL, referral to higher level, hasn't been resolved. Through this process, the energy or water provider only liaises with our office, and we endeavour to have a resolution back to the customer within approximately 20 business days. Sometimes with the complexity of issues, matters do extend out further than that, but our benchmark time frame is around that 20 business days. But a lot of the issues that we see do arise from billing disputes, and certainly understanding how to read an electricity bill or being able to explain to someone how to read their bill is extremely important. So together we're actually going to review an Ergon energy electricity bill. We're also going to drop the link to this in the chat as well, because Ergon really do have a very interactive billing platform for being able to understand a bill, and a very useful resource to actually stepping through a customer. And I'm also aware that a lot of the other energy providers have a similar or same type of resource available online as well. So firstly, an electricity bill is required by law to contain certain information, and this is all set out within the National Energy Retail Rules. And for those keeping notes, it's Rule 25. So as you can see, this bill contains contact information for the provider, account details, including an account number, billing period, so the number of days or the time frame that the bill is set out upon, the day the bill is issued, and when the next meter read is scheduled. Now, all this information must be contained on a bill, and the only inconsistency is where it's contained. So every retailer will have things set out a little bit different. Ergon, for instance, have a lot of this information upfront. Now, there will also be a summary of the bill, and you can see that under icon number 3, and that just gives a little breakdown of what the charges included in this bill are. And over to the right-hand side under account details is the amount, the total amount that's due and the due date that it's payable. Ergon Energy also have a section directly underneath that where they post important information about that bill. And one of the most common messages that I see in this area is whether the bill is based on an estimate or an actual meter read. A bill, if it's based on an estimate, must say it is, and that's when an actual meter read hasn't been obtained. So that's the first little trigger to maybe something might not be consistent on the bill. Another really important section of the bill is under icon number 6, and this is where we provide a comparison of your usage. Electricity providers provide this on the front of the bill, and the reason why this part might be really important for some of your customers is that it will provide a comparison over the past 12 months at least of billing. So if a customer says to you or a client says to you, I don't understand why this bill is so high, you can actually have a look at that comparison graph, and it will give you an indication of what the previous billing periods are, and also the bill from the same time the previous year. And often we see what we call seasonal fluctuations with billing, where it might be particularly high in summer because we're using our air conditioners and swimming pools more, or it could be high in some regions of Queensland, out west and Toowoomba, Gatton areas where we see a lot of customers engage the use of heaters during winter. So seasonal fluctuations are something really important to look out for, especially when confronted with I've received a high bill questions. The other thing is that these graphs might indicate is a sudden spike in consumption, which is out of the blue. So if it's not seasonally normal, or there hasn't been a usage time frame at a similar time or in the past, that might indicate, hang on, something's going on here. The other really important section of the bill is under number 8, and that will give you details about your supply address and your metering details. So if that's not consistent with the actual property, that might be something else to question with the customer or their provider. On the flip side of the bills, things start to get a little bit more technical, and this is where you're going to find information about the billing details broken down further. This part shows information about your meter numbers, the number of meters, the types of tariffs, like does the customer have a peak, an off-peak, do they have solar, and total usage. You'll also find how the charges have been calculated on this bill, and this is often a really good place to look at whether there is an anomaly, such as really high out of the blue usage, or maybe a concession hasn't been applied. So this is where you'll notice that on a bill. So those are just some things to look out for. And that's just a really brief overview of how to read the bills. And certainly you can get more information directly from a retailer. But importantly, if a customer comes to you and they do have experienced a high bill or have a high billing issue or limited capacity to pay, there is also always information upon that bill about a energy provider's customer care line. And these are dedicated teams that provide assistance to their customers. Specifically, if you need assistance, such as financial hardship assistance, details on how you can access hardship must be provided to you, and information about, say, the HEEAS as well. So importantly, it's really the message given from Jane before was encourage your clients, the energy customers, to communicate with their providers. Some of the common myths that we see around energy bills specifically relate to payment plans. And a customer will say to me, but I've been paying $10 a fortnight. They know that, they can see that, but they've still disconnected my electricity. Well, until a payment plan has been formalised with an energy provider, it's not a payment plan, and disconnection can still occur. So even if a customer believes that they've got an arrangement in place, that may not be enough to formalise that agreement. And we also do see additional issues surrounding default listings that occur from when people move out of properties and potentially have not updated their forwarding address to an energy retailer. And so there can be a lot of recurring issues from people moving out of a property, and that's something just to keep an eye out, especially if you're confronted with finalised electricity bills. Ask some of those questions. Did you provide a forwarding address? Have you received your final bill? Have you entered into an arrangement to pay? So some of those questions might be really helpful to helping your customers, your clients with their energy issues. But further tips just to assist the people that you see to fix issues that they have with their energy providers. Take fast action, act quickly, contact the provider as soon as you become aware of the issue, or encourage your client to do so. Explain to the energy provider what the issue is and what you want done to fix it. Keep notes from any interactions, even if it's just little scribbles. I'd encourage your customers, scribble on the energy bill. I see some of them, the most in-depth notes kept on people's bills. And then if you're not satisfied with the outcome, contact us for help. And I've got a slide here too that provides you all of our contact information. We do now have access to web chats, which I find very, very useful in real time when you have somebody sitting there with you and you want to run a few questions by our office. Jump online, access our web chat service, and you can speak to somebody in real time and to get further information, even if it's just some questions around bill or what you can do next to assist the clients that you've got sitting with us. And following our chat here, we will have access to further information within our chat, and certainly happy to field additional questions because I know that we've flown through all of this information so quickly. So back to you, Jane.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Lucy. That was great. And yes, I am sure we've got a lot of questions out there. So just wanted to check with John. Is there anything else, John, you wanted to share before we open up for questions?
No. Well, let's fire away. I reckon there'll be plenty out there, Jane.
Right. So, yeah, so if anyone's got any comments or questions, please place them up on the Q&A panel and we will commence now. So this is a question for yourself, Lauren. Can HEEAS be for an old account at a previous residence? You stated the client must be currently residing in the household, but can it be for an old account?
Yes, so there are extenuating circumstances. So we do know that people move out. So if they have moved out, we can certainly accept applications on a closed account, but the application does need to be initiated by the energy provider within 60 days, and it must not have been transferred to a debt collection agency. So they're the key points. 60 days, we need the application in from when the energy provider initiates the application. That means when the client contacts the energy provider, and it must not also have been transferred to a debt collection agency. The next part of that is we can extend that 60-day deadline to 6 months, but only in special circumstances, which include domestic and family violence, and then natural disasters, so house burning down, flood, or if the applicant has been in hospital with a life-threatening situation. But generally it is that 60-day time frame for closed accounts, and it doesn't matter if it's with a new energy provider in the new house, that's irrelevant. So you still can push back on the old energy provider to get that application form for the closed account.
Great, excellent, because that was going to be my next question, was in a situation where the customer has moved into a new premises under those sort of domestic violence situation, they can go to their previous retailer and get the form completed even though it's with a new one?
Yes, that's exactly right. That's fine. Because we do see that people move retailers as you do, so energy providers, so that's no problem at all. One thing to note is I can see another question has come up with HEEAS. So if a couple get together and one of them did receive the grant within 2 years, but the other didn't, but now they're both living on the bill, they wouldn't be able to apply because that one person has already received the grant within 2 years. So it does look at the household and the people on the bill. So that is important to note. So if one person's already got it in 2020 and now they've moved in with someone else, those people can't apply again because someone's already received the grant previously within that 2-year period.
Great, thank you. So Lucy, I'll pose this one to you. The question is, if a tenant of a rental property has an issue with a gas leak or a hot water system causing an unusually high bill while waiting for the real estate to repair it, who can they go to? Will the utility provider assist in those circumstances?
Look, we've actually seen some utility providers be very accommodating in these circumstances, especially when we have vulnerable customers on the other end. An example I can give you is that I had an elderly single gentleman who lived in a 1-bedroom unit, extremely high bill, which came from a faulty hot water system. The energy provider actually reduced that bill and also post-investigation closure monitored the next bill because that's the period that the hot water system was being repaired within, and applied an additional reduction in the cost of that bill. So what I would say is, if you can't get assistance through the utility provider, certainly come to our office. We don't look at what is just right. We look at what might be fair and reasonable as well, and take in all circumstances, including the individual nature of the customer.
Great, thank you. And look, I also know in some circumstances where the behaviour may be what we think may be occurring more broadly within a unit complex or something like that, we will take action and send the information through to one of the other services that we have arrangements with so that they can do an independent investigation on what may be occurring in those circumstances as well. Not very often does it occur, but we can do that.
And it ties on to Lauren's field as well. You know, the customer may be eligible for a HEEAS application in that process. So we will look at all options that are available to assist a customer.
Great. So Lauren, I have another question for you here.
Yeah, sure.
I think I can answer this, but just to be true and correct, I will put it to the expert, not the Jane view of the world. Will applying for a HEEAS affect a client's credit rating in the future?
No, it won't.
See, I would have got it right, but I thought I better check.
No, I'm glad we're on the same page. No, it absolutely won't. We don't report that to anyone, and it doesn't affect anything there. Great question though.
Yeah, and I think that's really important because that's a lot of what I get comments on when I'm out and talking to people about that is, oh, but it might affect that, or it'll go on record somewhere else and it will impact something else I may want to do in the future. And I understand that's a real concern, but just trying to debunk some of the myths to, you know, really make use of this facility that's available.
And Jane, if I can just add too, we also, the energy providers put a lock on the account to allow customers a minimum of 3 weeks to be able to complete the HEEAS application and send that back. So that prevents any disconnection action and also debt collection activity as well.
Great, thank you. Wonderful. So there's a comment here. I'm just quickly trying to read it. I think that, yeah, we can make sure we can reach out. It's a comment regarding connecting with early intervention and homelessness services. So I'll certainly reach out outside of this and work out how we can connect and share information and work with Lauren as well on getting that information through. So thanks very much for that question. We'll make sure we touch base. Great. Fantastic. Excellent. Anyone else got any questions or anyone else got anything they'd like to share? I'm surprised we haven't got more questions. Wonderful. John, you're on mute. Sorry.
Sorry, there you go. Sometimes you forget, like you got that little microphone there, but apologies to everyone. I just wanted to add, like, for FCAQ and for the people who participated in this webinar today, that FCAQ also has had recent funding to conduct more professional development training. And I think it's really important that if you're not members, we invited, or we extended the invitation beyond our membership for this webinar, but in a lot of other cases, it may not be the case. So our affiliate membership is where if you're in the financial resilience capability space, then it's really, our memberships are quite low, but to access a lot of information and resources, it's now really worthwhile to have membership with FCAQ, because it's not just this webinar, there'll be a number of professional development opportunities for a lot of people working in this space. And we would love to keep that connection with you all and broaden that scope, so everyone has the benefit of having experts like we have today in delivering really essential information to our work, our colleagues, and more importantly, to the clients that we serve. So I just wanted to make note of that. There is, if you've got any questions in regards to membership, if you've got any questions regarding this webinar as well, and you want to go through us, our contact details are there with their email or phone number. As we said at the start, Ewok has also got all their contact details if you need to get in touch with them as well.
Right.
Did you, Jane, did you want to? Oh, yep, yeah. Okay.
Sorry, I just got a couple of more questions that have come through. So thanks everyone for sending those through. So this one's for Lauren, but I think, Lauren, this one is about how often is training provided to the retailers about HEEAS?
Yeah, it's a really good question, that one. And the answer is we don't have, I guess, a regular training program set up. So that's actually something that's actually a really good point that we can do better. And I think particularly in last year with COVID, these sort of training sessions and educating the retailers about our schemes has fallen down a bit. So it is something I'm going to take back to the team and see what we can do. And, you know, by setting up more of a regular, whether it's 3 monthly, you know, refresher course for new employees who come on board, because I'm seeing a comment there that the closed account information I provided was new to some people. So I think this is something we can definitely do better on. So thank you for that. And we'll get in touch with the retailers and I guess set up maybe a more regular webinar similar to this perhaps, and get everyone up to speed or refresh on some of the more points in the scheme.
Yeah, Lauren, I think that's a great idea, and we have member sessions as well for our, our scheme participants, and we'll make sure that we cover off what we've shared today and strongly encourage that. And we will now know what we learn and get a little bit more every time as well. So we'll know where we can sort of push it a little bit more when we sort of see and think, hey, we think that that may have been a little bit more that you could have done there to help that customer, and
exactly
that can be done there. And look, I understand too, for some of the organisations, they're a big organisation and it may not have necessarily gone through the right process or the right information not necessarily provided. So it helps us to be able to debunk those myths sometimes as well. So
yeah,
that's great.
absolutely.
I think we can work together and get some good traction there, so that'll be great. So Lucy, I now have a question for you. The question is from one of our listeners today is, I see many clients presenting for financial support with electricity accounts over $3,000 with often nothing paid for nearly 12 months. Is this something that normal or something that we see regularly?
Yes, it is. And I think one of the big problems is that because there has been especially in the last 12 to 18 months, with this statement of expectations, there has been a complete hold on disconnections and even debt collection through this time. We are possibly going to start seeing this as a more new normal going forward, probably toward the latter half of this year into next year, where people have got a lot higher bills and they haven't been in the habit for the past 12 to 18 months of making any contributions to the bill. And not saying that's right or wrong, but I think from a perspective of a financial counsellor or anybody working to develop financial literacy in customers, is developing those habits of making regular contributions toward their bills, whether they start out small, the $20, $30 per week or fortnight toward the bill. Even just developing or redeveloping those habits are going to go a long way toward eventually increasing the regular payments to meet the actual level of consumption, if nothing else. We're also, through some of our investigations, depending on what the circumstances that have led toward the accrual of debt, we will look at which parties have been responsible for allowing the debt to accrue without anything being paid toward it, what level of assistance has been provided, what has been the level of contribution by a customer, and we might look at what might be a fair way for a customer to move on with their bill. Obviously, being presented with a $3,000, $5,000, $12,000 debt in some instances is insurmountable. But certainly, if some of that debt can be reduced in the initial instance, and the customer has that feeling that eventually I'm going to be able to get back on top of things, and they're encouraged just to commence making payments, then that's going to go a long way for them to be able to keep the lights on long term.
Great. Wonderful, thank you. So John, I'll hand back over to you now. We seem to have finished the questions, but again, as John and I have said, any further questions or anything you come up with, please reach out to either us or FCAQ and we'll answer the best we can.
There you go, I've clicked unmute. Thanks, Jane. And before I say some thank yous, I just want to let everyone know about the survey for this webinar. There is a link there It's in the Q&A section of the Microsoft application there. So if I just encourage everyone to participate in that survey, because what the survey does, it lets us know how we can construct webinars that suit you as listeners and improve on the way that we communicate the message. So the more that you respond to it, the more that we can continuously improve these sessions and opportunities for you to get a clearer, a better message of information that is vitally important. So I'd just like to encourage people to participate in that survey. Another thing too is that we're planning another webinar with Ewok. It is with a Q, it's not with a K, it's not little Ewoks from Star Wars too. I just want to clarify that with our listeners. EWOQ, not the K. But on the 27th of October, so pencil it in. What we do at FCAQ though, that we're going to set up a calendar for all our members, which will show all our webinars there, and you can link straight into, from the calendar, you can link straight into the webinar as well. So, you know, so that's really important, but please pencil the 27th of October. Good one, Sonia. That's pretty cute. And a big thank you to Jane. Firstly, Jane contacted me not long after the FCA conference in regards to setting up this webinar, and I just think the support that Ewok provides us is incredible, and they continue to do it year in, year out, and their access to for themselves, for us, there's no barriers there. And I just really want to say a big thank you to Jane and also the presenters Lucy and Lauren, who have a wealth of experience and are very competent in providing that support that is needed for us to get some answers relating to certain situations. So it was a great presentation. So a big thank you to you, Lucy and Lauren. And Lucy, I do remember you back. I think we met in 2010, I think was the last time, or might have been 11 when you left. So it's really good to see you do so well at Ewok and making massive contributions to people in the energy space. So thank you to that. Now, on the back end of this, another little thank you. We have some wonderful people that set this all up. We couldn't have done it. Jane and I, yes, we consider ourselves, you know, experts and all this, but the real experts are behind the screens. And a big thank you to the team of Ewok, led by Andrea. It's just been fantastic, very smooth. So a big thank you there too. So look, in the end, stay safe. You know, stay safe, keep well, everyone, and know that, you know, support or help or assistance is only a phone call away. So all the best, and looking forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks very much, John. Thanks, everybody.